Today I'm honored to be speaking with G. Edward Griffin, an author, filmmaker, and researcher best known for his groundbreaking book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. For decades, he has been a voice challenging the official narratives around money, banking, politics, and even health. His work has sparked conversations worldwide about freedom, individual responsibility, and the hidden forces shaping our society. Hello, everyone. This is the Free American Press with your host, Alexander Horat, and today we're honored to be joined by G. Edward Griffin. Hello, thank you for being on the show.
Well, hello, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so first I'd like to go over your book. So, in your book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, you state the Federal Reserve is not a government institution acting in the public interest, but rather a private banking cartel created to serve the financial elite at the expense of ordinary citizens. Can you tell us a bit how this creature's evolved and where we are at today as it relates to the path towards a digital banking system?
And how can I?
Owning real estate always has been and always will be one of the best ways to secure your future and build generational wealth. Whether you're buying or selling or reinvesting in the US, be sure to reach out to me through the link below and I can help you. I'm a licensed real estate agent in Northern California. Or if you're needing help in a different state, I can refer you to a good agent to help you with your needs. And by doing this, you'll be supporting the channel and me continuing my work, and you'll also be getting a good service as well. And another way you can support the channel is you can follow me on Patreon and Ko-Fi. If you'd like to help me out directly through that, through donations, that would be great as well. So I can continue delivering this information. And I'd just like to thank you all for watching. The video continues now. Thank you.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of my my life in the last, I guess it's been 30 years since that book, the first edition, was published, and I've been tracking the Federal Reserve and central banking around the world ever since. So I guess if I couldn't talk about that, I've sort of missed the mark. So how did it come to being? First of all, what you just read from my summary of my findings in the book is absolutely correct. That came as a big shock to me when I started to do the research on this topic. Because like everyone else, I went through school and I even had a course on economics that touched on market forces and money creation and all that sort of thing. And I was taught at the university level that the Federal Reserve System was an agency of the federal government. I don't think they ever said it that plainly or directly, but they talked around it, and they never said it was anything else.
Yeah.
When you realize that an institution such as the Federal Reserve has the power to make up the rules and describe the rules, publish the rules with such force and authority that if you violate the rules, you can go to prison. So you think, well, that's got to be government, right? Who else can do that? A private cartel can't do that, or can it?
Yeah.
And that's where I found out, yes, it can. And the only thing it has to do is just effectively capture control of Congress. And well, that sounds like an impossible task. And it is impossible for you and for me to do, but it's not impossible for a banking cartel to do, because the cartel was, in effect, even then, able to create our money. Now, it was being created by the banks at an individual state level prior to that, prior to the formation of the Federal Reserve, but the banks were really creating the money, and we thought it was the government. Well, the government was involved. They would issue gold and silver certificates, but the banks also were involved in creating money, and I think, I haven't looked at those figures for a long time, but I think even more money than the federal government was. And they called them banknotes, and they circulated like money, and that was the way it was back in the day. Most of the banknotes claimed that they were backed by gold or silver, that they said they were holding in the vault for the occasion when you decide you want your real money back. It was representative money, or receipt money, as we call it. But the only trouble with that is that they lied.
Yeah.
And the lie started off a little bit of a lie, and then the lie kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the so-called reserve system, meaning or implying at least that they had gold or silver in reserve in the vault in case you really wanted it, and that was supposed to limit the quantity of money being produced, that the politicians couldn't just say, well, we need another $1 billion today. The old system used to be, well, that's fine, then give us the gold and we'll give you the paper dollars as receipts, and we'll guarantee to everybody that those receipts actually have the gold or the silver worth $1 billion, or whatever we were calling it in those days, in reserve. Well, it started off, well, they kept most of it in reserve, and then a lot of it in reserve. And the years went by, well, some of it was kept in reserve. The years went by, well, very little of it was kept in reserve. And the years go by, we passed that point a long time ago, there ain't nothing in reserve.
Yeah.
And the net promise, they say, don't worry about the money system. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, So what more could you ask for? Well, my answer would be gold and silver, thank you. That's what I would ask for, because the full faith and credit of the United States government, what does that mean? That means, when you run the numbers and figure the politics, that means that the government promises to pay you back something, dollars in this case, every cent that it borrowed from you, and it'll pay it all back plus interest. They promise, and they will do it. If they have to take everything from you in taxes and inflation to do it, by golly, they will do it. So
Yeah.
we didn't realize that there was that part of the equation, that where does that value come from? Well, it comes from the labor of all of us. And the only way you can counterbalance the value of labor is with a money system that itself requires labor to produce, like mining gold and silver or something else. Your monetary system historically is of no value. Eventually, it always destroys itself unless it is based on something which has intrinsic value and something that people would want even if it weren't money. And so that's a little lesson on money. But back to the main session, I didn't know any of this when I started it. I thought it would be a slam dunk little weekend project to do a little research of how the Federal Reserve System, which surely was a government agency, and of course I started right off the bat having a wrong idea of what it was, but how would they create money, and how do they distribute it, and how do they protect us, folks, which I'm sure that's what they want to do. Well, I was about as naive as you can get. And what I discovered is that the Federal Reserve System is not even a bank. It's an institution. And strictly speaking, it is a cartel. That's the kind of institution it is. A cartel, by definition, is a grouping of business enterprises or companies that are separate from each other and, on the surface at least, appear to be in cooperation, or in competition, not cooperation, in competition with each other. And but they join together like workers might join together in a labor union, or like an institution, a business might join together as an association. For example, I remember the first example that I got into discovering how these associations or cartels really work is when I had to examine the milk associations in some of the states in the Midwest. They called them associations, but they were cartels. They were membership groups made up of the different dairies. The biggest ones, the biggest dairies, of course, dominated the group or the association or the union, whatever you want to call it, but it's really a cartel, and it meets all the classical definitions of a cartel. And I was looking at the milk cartel, and they promoted themselves as being for the good of the people. They said that we need to fix milk prices just to make sure that there aren't greedy dairies that raise the prices too high. And then the milk would not be available for the middle class or the lower income families. And we need milk for children and babies and so forth. And we can't let these greedy dairy companies, us, they were speaking about, some of our members, raising prices too high where the average person couldn't afford it. So you see, we've got to fix prices to protect the public. And of course, the gum chewing public buys into that propaganda all the time. They said, yeah, it's a great idea. We got to have milk for babies and children. And well, the truth of the matter is the real motive behind the price fixing was the fact that some of the dairies were lowering their prices uncomfortably low for the rest of them. They didn't want to lower them anymore. But the more competitive dairy companies said, well, we can make enough money with less price on our quart of milk, so let's do it. And so the whole idea from the scratch up was to protect the dairy producers, not the dairy consumers. And I thought, wow, I didn't know that. And that was, of course, the beginning of a long series of discoveries about the real world, especially in the economy. The real world that has anything to do with money and banking is loaded with that kind of deception from top to bottom. And once I got into it, first of all, I thought I was the last person in the world to write a book about money and banking. I never even thought about it until I ran out of money and went to the bank to see if I could borrow some of it. I never questioned who made it and how it came about and all that stuff. So that's when I became interested in producing a documentary film, a very low budget documentary film on some of these deceptions that I was discovering. I didn't know it at the time, but I was just seeing the tip of the iceberg. I didn't realize how much ice of deception was underwater, and I didn't even see it. But what I saw was very alarming. So I discovered I had a crusader gene, and I decided that I was going to learn about it as much as I could and produce a documentary film. Maybe it would take me a month or something to produce it and solve the problem. People will say, aha, and they'll vote out the scoundrels that were perpetuating this fraud, and we could go back to watching Dancing with the Stars or whatever was on television at that time. So that's how I got into it, really sort of accidentally. I backed into it. I didn't expect to be a crusader, certainly not in a field like that. And first thing you know, 7 years later, I had decided I'd done enough research, and I had been making speeches, putting on seminars called a one-day seminar called A Crash Course on Money. And those were so very well received that it encouraged me to write a book. And so that's it. It's just a long story of little baby steps along the way. And converting this young guy, at that time I was in my late 20s and early 30s, converting this young kid out of being a complete naive nincompoop about the real world of money and everything else, by the way, into sort of a skeptic and a realist. And that's where I have been ever since.
Yeah, that's great, and I think that's great that you made that book and that documentary. So I guess my next question is, how can we get rid of the private banking cartel? Because it seems like we live in a uniparty. We elect some person for president, then we get another, and then they do exactly what the other person was doing, or as bad. So yeah, my question is, how do you think we can realistically get rid of this federal banking cartel?
Well, I'm glad you added the word realistically, because the theoretical solution is really quite simple. We get rid of it the same way we got it. An act of Congress. Congress passed the law, the Federal Reserve Act, and made it law. Congress has within its power today, this afternoon, tomorrow morning, whatever it decides, to abolish the Federal Reserve the same way. So that's the short, stupid answer. Because the next question is, well, how do you do that? How do you get all these Congress people and senators and the ones even you don't vote for that are all in these middle positions of authority and power, the bureaucrats, the people appointed to be the head of the Treasury and where all the power centers lie? How do you get past those people? Because they're not going to want to do this. They're making a darn good living, to say the least, from this whole scam. And they're the ones with the hands on the political power. So how do you get their hands off of the levers and put our hands on those levers, our people who have no axe to grind except honesty and good monetary system? And then how do we protect the future in such a way that even ourselves or our replacements, our children and our grandchildren, and the people that come into office after us, how do we make sure that those people aren't corrupted and go back and reproduce the same system again? So that's where it really gets interesting, because you have to think strategically of how you bring that about. And I think I know how to bring it about. I didn't invent the strategy, but I studied it. I studied it by watching how the cartels did it. And they're very smart. And by the way, when you start talking about these cartels, it doesn't take long before you realize that they are just part of something much bigger and deeper than just banking. It involves all aspects of our economic and social and political life, and to some degree even our spiritual life, because there is, I believe, and I have discovered, I won't say believe it, I know it, there is a small group of oligarchs, that seems to be the name that people like to use right now, the people who are running the world, and for the most part, we don't know their names. They're not in the news, and they're not the people we vote for. These are the people who fund and direct the people we vote for. And once you get that picture beginning to focus, all of a sudden you're not in grade school anymore. Now you understand how the big boys are playing up there, and you realize that this is really more than even politics or making a profit. This is warfare, and the style of war has changed, starting with about the French Revolution. It changed from the old style, which used to be conquest by superior armies. The guy that had the most soldiers with the best armor or the best weapons, but usually the most soldiers, was the political leader. He was the leader of the nation. And you better believe it, because if you disagreed with that appraisal, you were off with your head. Well, about the time of the French Revolution, the discovery of the printing press and the Enlightenment and all those things, an idea became very popular in human society, and that is that the proper function of society is that we should individually and collectively as a society choose our leaders, not by guns and bullets and coercion, but by the voice and will and consent of those of us who are ruled. So all of a sudden the idea of elections showed up. What a stupid idea it would have been, 500 years prior to that. An election? Genghis Khan? You're going to vote for Genghis Khan? Try it, yeah. So the idea of elections and democracy all of a sudden was a word that nobody had ever heard of. All of a sudden the French Revolution comes along, and it's vive la comradeship and equality and peace, and all of a sudden, and people got the impression that, yes, by golly, this is the new and better way, that the people themselves should select their own leaders. Well, did that really happen? I thought it did. In school, they said it happened. Now I know, especially now that I'm 93 years old, and I've been learning all this time, it hasn't been that way ever, but it appeared to be that way. The new rulers, with the arrival of technology of the printing press, and then finally the technology of a PA system, a loudspeaker and a radio, and then the technology of television, and now the technology of AI and so forth, and internet and transmitting ideas that the little man, the people on the street, all have access to. This is the battlefield now. And the idea is to convince the oligarchs or the people in charge, let's just call them the rulers, I call them sometimes the cabal, the oligarchs, let's stick with that. They are still at war. They're still conquering people, and they still are enslaving people. But instead of conquering people from other nations, they're conquering people from within their own nations. And the people think that they're their leaders when in fact they are their conquerors. And the way they conquer is not with guns and bullets, but with ideas, with language, with vocabulary, with propaganda. It's what they sometimes refer to as opinion modification or opinion control. And they have even now at all of our great universities, they have courses that you could study and become experts at opinion control, engineering, propaganda, how to get people to consent to their own enslavement. I come to the point. So now the way you enslave people, conquer them, is through their own minds, because all you have to do is convince them that their loss of liberty and their obedience to you is in their own best interest. It's for their own good. And that's the mantra of collectivism, that it's for the greater good of the greater number. So that's the main weapon of warfare today. It's not who's got the most guns and bullets, although that can be a very strong psychological element in this war, to fear an opponent or fear war because of all of these weapons of mass destruction. Well, we've got to negotiate. We can't have war anymore. We'll negotiate. We'll give up this. We'll give up that because we can't risk military war. It'll be the end of the planet. So that's a psychological weapon. The idea that you've got to have the consent of the governed, and elections are the only way to go. And so now we're back to the political party system. And wow, all I can tell you is once you start opening that door, because you know that there's information hidden from you, and you finally jiggle now you've learned something that was hidden by that door. But now that you're inside the new room, it's a huge room, and there are 1,000 doors around the side of the room. Each of those are hiding another secret. And you can say, well, I want to know what the secret is behind that one, the truth behind that one. And you open it up, just one of them, another big room with another 1,000 doors. And the further you go, the more you realize that literally everything that you thought as a young person, that you cherished, you firmly believed in, everything is a lie at some level. And there's another element to that. Not everything, okay. Only the important things. Only the important things. And the degree to which they are important, the more important they are, the more likely it is that there will be deceit involved. So, because when you say what is important, well, in terms of this analysis, what is important is control over other human beings, because this is the mastery of the planet. Nobody's ever conquered the whole world before, but that's what they're hell-bent on doing now. And they know that the best way to do it is not to wage war between nations, but to infiltrate all nations and get them all united. They appear to be separate. People are still thinking they're part of a separate nation, but all of the nations are moving together at the same time. And they say, how did that happen? Take COVID, for example. We have this false idea of a pandemic that it was not real. It was all propaganda. But it was announced at the same time, everywhere in the world, by all nations of the world. The message was always the same. Even the wording was the same. Pandemics, so many people died. The only solution is a vaccine. You got to be trapped in your home, wear a mask, all that nonsense that didn't apply to it. It was all theater. But it was all broadcast around the whole world from all different countries. None of them that I'm aware of was free of that. So we found by that example that there were already the spores of the mushrooms planted in the ground everywhere in the world for a one world government. We already have it. We just don't know it. They haven't announced it yet. So now, getting back so I can put a summary on all this, my journey has been through that kind of a path, and it's still going on. And discovering the truth about the Federal Reserve System was a very important part of that journey, but it's not the only part, and it's not the only thing we need to look at, because my message is that we are at war, and most of us don't know it. We have leaders that tell us that they are our leaders, they care about us, but they always fail us, don't they? They tell us they're going to make us some kind of a big change if we just vote for them. Well, we vote for them, and then 4 years, 8 years, 10 years later, we find nothing really changed. It just got worse. It always progresses in the direction of more and more and more government, and less and less and less freedom, and more and more and more taxes, and less and less and less free currency to use for your own self. And where that is headed now is where you have zero freedom, and you have total control, and you don't have any money at all. It'll be digital. That's not money. If you can't put it in your pocket and say, here it is, you don't have it. If you think it's in an account, oh, look, turn on your computer. I've got 3,000 units. See, I'm rich. And you go have a cup of coffee, you come back, hey, what happened to my units? They're gone.
Yeah.
Somebody above you decided they didn't like what you're saying or thinking, and you just don't have any units. So now, what do you do to buy food and pay the rent, buy gasoline? You don't have any way to survive. You are dependent now as a slave or a beggar out in the street asking for coins. Uh-oh, no coins. It's a digital system now. All right, this is where we're headed, and my message is if we don't wake up, pretty soon it's going to go there.
So do you think the people will rebel once they get rid of the physical dollar, or do you think they're probably not?
If they ever get rid of the physical dollar or anything like it, they will want to rebel. Some of them will, but they will not succeed because they have nothing with which to rebel. They won't have weapons. They will already have taken their weapons away from them, even though the guns are pea shooters compared to the weapons that the cartels have. But at least we have, guns. Those will be taken away from us. They won't have any food. They'll be pretty hungry. They'll be looking around in garbage cans for food. They're not ready for rebellion if they don't have guns or clubs and they don't have food and water. Electricity's turned off. They don't have gasoline. They can't. Their TVs are turned off. They can't talk to each other. They're hiding in their homes, shivering, shaking. Are they coming to get me today? That's what will happen. And I'm not exaggerating. This is little versions of that have already happened in this world. And this is what these monsters really want to convert the whole world into. With them sitting at the top, ruling everybody, just pulling the levers, and everybody will have to be totally obedient, as it was in ancient times.
It seems like they want to get rid of individualism and have collectivism, basically the collective to serve them as the master, like you said. So how do you think we can promote individualism? How do you think we can stop the government from taking that away from us?
Well, that's again the simple solution is to collectivism requires laws. Lack of personal freedom to choose. The collective says this is what you're going to do because it's for your own good, and you will do this, and you won't do that, and this is where you're going to live, and this is the job you're going to do, and this is what you'll have allocated to you for entertainment, but you can't look at anything on your TV except what we prescribe. So the options for rebellion will be reduced to zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be only the massive suicidal waves, which is, I don't know, it's never happened. There have been local instances where it's been represented, but usually there were outside forces that came in and changed the balance. If you can picture the whole bloody world, there's no place to go, nobody to come and save you. You know, there's nobody to go invade Nazi Germany and get rid of the Nazis anymore because the Nazis now own the whole world. So who's going to break up the Nazis? Who's going to break up, Mussolini's regime in Italy? Who's going to break up the communist regime? Well, who's going to break up this thing in America? I mean, that's where it's coming from now. It's coming from inside each of these countries. So now, to answer your question, can this be broken? Yes, but time is running out while we still have enough freedom to make changes without that. I mean, without guns and without violence and without bloodshed. There probably is going to be some because that's what they want. If things are going too much in our favor, the cartels and the Kabbalists will probably instill some kind of revolution. They'll put up false revolutionary leaders. They'll pretend to be like us. They'll say the same things we're saying, and then they go out and kill a lot of innocent people. Maybe they'll kill somebody of a different race or a different religion so that you can create massive hatred and resentment from large groups of people, and they'll want revenge. They can simulate and stimulate and start wars. That's what they're very good at that. They're right now trying to start a war over there in the Middle East, and they're working on it, and it looks like they're going to do it. And those poor people are going to pay for it. They're being manipulated. So back to my point, we can turn this around, but first of all, we've got to have a respectable number of people, the percentage of the population, who understand what I'm just saying. As long as they continue to follow the existing narrative, which is everything is fine, it's just we got bad people and good people. All you got to do is just vote for the good people, and we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. If that's the level of their solution, nothing's going to change. But once you understand that we're living in an age of deception, and you've got to be very skeptical, you've got to be suspicious of anybody who has the power to take away your liberty and your money. You've got to be suspicious of those people, even though you like them, even though you trust them. I mean, I've never met a con artist that I didn't like. And that goes in politics as well, because as we all know, many of those people, if not most of them, are con artists. We've got to wake up to that first.
That's definitely true. I actually have a friend in Missouri named Patrick Holland, and he has a Missouri Freedom Initiative, and he's been trying to fight corruption and things in Missouri. And he recently helped get a bill passed making gold and silver legal tender in Missouri. Um, so I was just wondering what your thoughts on that were.
Well, I think that's a great step in the right direction. I'm all for it, naturally, because gold and silver or platinum, or I don't care what it is, anything that's tangible in nature, and especially bullion metals, because they're relatively indestructible, and you can weigh them. It has a lot of qualities that, in the beginning of this whole monetary system, it was wheat primarily. Well, wheat was the main one in ancient Egypt, and in Sumer, they discovered all these clay tablets underneath one of the temples, and they thought, we found a record of civilization up to the Sumerian era, and they translated them as best they could, and they found out that most of them were accounting records for bowls of wheat, and it was a monetary system. They discovered the banking records instead of, although among them they did find the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was a great story. In fact, the first story ever written, as far as we know. And scholars say that every story that's ever been told since then is contained in that first story of the Epic of Gilgamesh. That's a sidetrack. Anyway, money has to be something which is valuable for something other than money before it becomes the best use for money. So once you have to understand that, then you understand how it works. You don't have to have it explained to you again. And so that means that we've got to have people in government who understand it and who will follow the rules and get rid of this fiat system that is leading to our destruction. They're not going to be able to succeed if we have free access to real money. They won't be able to, because we'll be able to move around their control mechanisms and say, look, I've got $20 in my pocket. Are you sure you won't let me through this line? That's the way it's always been done. But when you get rid of money and everything has to be on the ledger in a digital form, all you have to do is convince everybody digital is good. And they're all good. Oh, yeah, sign me up for it and take my money away. I'll be digital. I'll survive. And the answer is they will survive until their rulers decide that they will not survive.
So they basically want everybody to live in an outdoor prison, kind of like North Korea, but with more surveillance and digital aspects.
That's a good summary, I would say, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, and another thing my friend Patrick has been working on in Missouri is to get property tax gotten rid of in the state. I wonder what your thoughts on that are.
Oh, boy. Yes. Can you think of anything more ridiculous than a property tax? Why? Because what is property? Well, I've written a lot on that, but the conclusion for me is property is a human right. It's not a privilege. It's not something that's to be ignored. Now, isn't it nice? It's a human right, like speech, freedom of speech. It comes with you. You have, as a human being, you have a right to your body as your own property. You have a right to something you work to create. It's your property. All humans, all mammals, and many other species have an instinct for property. And that instinct is tied very closely to the mating instinct in some species. I mean, it's all part of property. Look at the property. Be my mate, This is property that we can share and protect our young ones, our offspring, from hostile forces. They don't use it as a language, but it's instinctively. They do that. Most intelligent species have an instinct for property. So property is not just something you can play with. It's a human right. And can you imagine taxing somebody to be able to speak?
Right.
Can you imagine taxing somebody to be able to travel? Well, why can you tax somebody to own property, which is a human right, like all the others? Nobody looks at it that way because it's not in the debate. That stuff is kept out of the debate. And if you don't think about it, then it doesn't exist. That's part of the way our enemy works. There are a lot of things he just doesn't want us to think about, because if we don't think about it, we may not know that it even exists. So yes, I'm all on board for a national crusade, international crusade, of the insanity and absurdity and the unfairness of taxing a human right called property.
That's great. Yeah, I think it'd be great to get back a allodial title. That's something that we originally had when we had our revolution that had been taken away from us. Uh, Getting it back into some of the questions of today that's going on, we have seen the enactment of the Genius Act and the implementation of tariffs. As far as the Genius Act, we are told that these will provide a regulatory framework and financial stability to stable coins. On tariffs, we were told that they will boost American manufacturing and protect jobs. What are your thoughts on these?
Well, I'll have to clean up my language. I'll just say it sounds to me like male bovine excrement.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. When is your next Red Pill Expo going to be?
Well, we haven't decided for sure. It was going to be in November, but that's too close to do a good job. And besides, we're building campuses of Red Pill University right now to have people at the local level organized to make a difference in the political arena in the local communities. And I think that's so important that I'm going to spend all the time on that in the next few months that I would have spent in putting together another expo. If that plan stays in effect, then our next expo will probably be next May or June.
Oh, that's great to
So,
hear.
yeah, come on board and send us your sign in here. And in fact, if you want to be on my mailing list, the simplest way is to go and sign up for a free subscription to our newsletter, which is called Need to Know News. And so just go to needtoknow.news, and I think you'll like the report. And there's a place in the upper corner just to sign up for free, and then you'll be advised of the expo and all the other things that we do to get into trouble.
Yep, I'm going to share the screen so everybody can see that site you just mentioned. So needtoknow.news.
Yeah,
And
that's it right there.
well, that's amazing. Well, I just like to say thank you for being on the show with me and providing all this wonderful insight and testimony on yourself with your sickness. And I just like to thank you again, Edward.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and I hope I didn't bore anybody with my story, but there's a lot to be said. So come on board, and if this didn't scare you away, then we've got lots more, and I hope you want to become part of our movement. Our campuses are going to be set up, hopefully, in every county in the United States, and we're trying to take back our country, starting at the ground up, not at the top down, but at the ground up. Build the foundation first. Then I think we have a chance to succeed.
Yeah, you're definitely right. We need to save our local county first in order to be able to save our state and then
That's right.
the federal
That's right.
government.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Griffin. It was great having you on.
All right. Well, thanks, and good luck to you. And maybe we'll see you at the next expo.
Oh, that would be great. And I'd like to thank everyone for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day.